All right. Stand up here. There's no remote.
It's not on my screen. Oh, I see it.
Got it.
All right, we're live.
Okay, welcome everybody. Let's see, waiting for a couple others, but we thought we'd get going. You want to start off with Commissioner?
Yeah, Melissa's going to take it today, but just this is like surreal to be back here in the building. I'm still sort of disoriented in terms of like just what we missed out on the last couple of years. So good to have y'all back and here in room 204 once again.
So this is a repeat for Jeanette, but here we have some pictures from our very first senior signing day. For those who don't know about senior signing day, generally it's where students declare their next steps to their community, to their families, to their school community, to their teachers. So we had a really beautiful ceremony where kids got to cross the stage, explain where they were going, why, their purpose, and even you see the roses here in the pictures, dedicate a rose to someone who helped them get to that point. So it was a beautiful and emotional day. We had all grades downstairs, all of our teachers, and kids got to invite their family members as well, for those who couldn't come or for who aren't ready to be in large group settings. We even were able to live stream it. So it was really great. We can't wait to make this a big unity tradition and blow it up even more next year, because it was just a super special day. And we're thankful that we get to do things like this again, even cautiously.
Yeah, I mean, some of the power of it was just having 9th grade students see their role models, who they idolize on stage as 12th grade. And some of our kids who are really cool and maybe haven't been most stellar or most sort of like, I'm going to do whatever we need to do here at school. And also be honest about like how appreciative they are of their experience here and of their teachers. And I remember one student saying, I'm going to become a math teacher someday, you watch. So just some really good moments there where I feel like it's a culture builder. And so next year, our hope is to have our middle school students taking part in that too. And so just imagine as a 13-year-old seeing that among kids who you idolize and seeing that each year on through and then saying to yourself, what am I going to say someday? What do I want to be like? What do I want to be able to sort of say and do? Some really impressive exposure too. So it was not something I've ever experienced. Melissa has in prior settings, and I was like blown away by how powerful it is. So, yeah, a ritual indeed. In terms of just some numbers right now, in speaking with Eric last week, I think we've got 78, just shy of 80% of our seniors who've now been accepted to a 2 or 4 year college, and 84 who have applied. So there are a couple of students we're still waiting for. But given that's lower than what we experienced 2 years ago with our founding class, and maybe slightly lower than last year. We knew some of that would be the case, and I think we've gotten a bit more comfy with like career aspirations and being like, hey, if this student wants to go on and be a welder someday, let's make that happen and accept them up to do that well. So I'm pleased with these numbers, and it's good to have 3 years of sort of information to then begin to think about who are we, who do we want to be, what can we perhaps position ourselves and refine the way in which we do things to best serve our kids and their aspirations. So that's the latest as of May, and I'll say a bit more about graduation forecast later on.
Well, while you keep going, then I think you had a school reported some of this.
Yeah, so head of school report, I keep it brief today. I'll admit I have noticed some redundancies with the dashboard in the school report. So I tried to just avoid that and maybe get rid of some things that are reported out on twice, such as attendance, such as enrollment, and that kind of thing. So you'll notice it's only about 3 or 4 pages versus sometimes getting up to double digits. I think I would just underline as we head into June what we're prioritizing right now. And I would say just in the intro paragraph of this report, a lot of time has been spent on the sort of staff retention and conversation front, and thinking about team and building and keeping the strongest team possible, in addition to hiring. I'll say more about that soon. I know that Chris has done a great job with his team thus far in managing student matriculation and recruitment. in an environment where I think it's as competitive as it's ever been. And thinking back to an article I read yesterday where there were more kind of the same reports on trends in the downward direction with regard to urban schools and populations and folks move away. This and that. So I've been impressed. We'll say more about that as we get into the dashboard. And then from a planning perspective, I'll say more about this in June, but there's been some good work among senior leaders. And then at the site level, just beginning our school leadership teams, the high school and middle school, thinking about key priorities in the coming year. And what that looks like, what success looks like from like a metrics level, and then what action planning we have to do over the course of July, August, and next year to see some of these priorities through. So I'll be reporting out on that next month. On the teaching and learning front, I think right now there has been some trade-off with regard to how we're devoting our time. And so I think there's been more time directed toward hiring and agreement conversations and such. It's also the time of the year in which we're focusing kind of on online assessments at the high school regents, the middle school, our state exams. I think there's been perhaps a downshift in our work with teaching and learning with regard to observational walkthrough work. And mixed feelings about that, but I think that's just the reality of the way in which we're trying to devote our time in ways that are most impactful in the school and success beyond this year. So that's kind of where we are as we think about May and June, but this keeps us directed, I think, in making sure that we're not missing anything and we're making tough decisions. We know what the trade-offs are. From a headline front, I would just say Earl's here, so I'm going to go downstairs to make sure that he can get in. So why don't I do that and come back in a moment. Awkward pause. I'll be right back.
How do you feel about the graduation forecast?
I'm feeling okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to contextualize this within this year. I think it won't be as perhaps perfect as it was for 2 years, but it's looking good. And we've got structures that I think are supportive to our students who need it most. But even when we look at something like there is some time between when our students finish for the year and graduation. So our seniors leave a little bit earlier. June is generally Regents preparation and Regent season. Our seniors don't really take that. We're looking at 7 students who will not have completed by June, and some of those 7 will have concerted support through June to help them get there via the senior credit recovery. So it's looking pretty good. There are a couple of students who are having, I think, behavioral, if you will, struggles at this time of year. We'll go through a little bit of that, and a couple of students who have so I don't know if anybody saw the article that came out, the like new conversation. Hi.
Two.
School
Copies.
people
Sorry,
like
so
those
late.
who haven't been here very much, but or who have very big.
Yeah.
Hi.
Jim Ellsworth, Earl Silas, Jeanette Andrews, and Melissa Dutton.
Hi.
All right.
Nice to meet you in person.
Okay, and then Trudy's on screen. There she is, and Chris is on screen.
Kids are
Here we
more
are.
chronically through it, but I think it's looking pretty.
You can sit, oh, I'll just grab the water.
Two students who are most worried about for June.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of hustle from teams to give students multiple opportunities, to support them, to carve pathways.
Melissa?
Sounds like some of these folks can catch up in August, but we have to submit our first renewal application before that.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not gonna capture those folks.
Yeah.
So we have to present that in the right way.
All right, so we're YouTubing it right now. We're live in front of millions of people. We've got 2 additional board members now in session, and so right now we're working through the school year report and key updates. I've said a few words just about what we're focusing on in May and June and where the priorities lie. So in terms of headlines, I think I'll just underline three. You can read what else is here, and you've seen this, but I think just on a safety front right now, I think just consistent with sort of city trends, we did experience just over a week ago, 2 weeks ago, an uptick in confirmed cases. It was kind of a scary Friday morning in which we had 6 staff members test positive, all within a couple of hours of each other. And Melissa and I were sort of at WeWork doing some strategic planning, and so it's kind of an anxiety-driven morning. But there hasn't been anything that's kind of moved beyond those 6 or 7 cases. I think we've got 14 cases overall in the building right now, and so yeah, I think we've got the machinery now to manage and provide school safely. And so I think, again, just kind of consistent with what the city's been doing and seeing with regard to precautionary measures.
No, all these cases are coming out of like tests to remain. Like, is it random testing, or are these people who are, had sniffles and took a test?
Yeah, I think.
It's a combination. So our first, that morning Josh alluded to, a teacher, I think, wasn't feeling well, tested at school, went home. So everyone who was close contacted got a test, went home, took it. And some of them were very surprised to find positive results. So that first wave that came sort of across a morning very suddenly was because we did a large scale contacted test. But now we're getting, for the first time, kids in our like normal weekly testing who will come back positive. We are getting folks who are just like routinely, we have, I think, something like 4,000 tests in the building, so we're giving them out regularly. So just in like everybody's weekly regimen of testing, they're coming back. It's, over a very, very short amount of time, our city moved from low to high. So, and because we have ready access to tests, folks are coming back positive.
Is anybody really sick? Is it seriously sick, or is it just?
No, like
Just symptoms,
hospitalizations. I've got folks, especially the adults, and some of the kids who are not feeling well. They're not, they're watching a lot of TV, and I've got some folks who are home who are like, I was home. I like felt fine. I worked. I did some. I watched a lot of television. So there's a variety.
So I think as a result of that, we went back into having a mask requirement here during school hours here at the middle school and high school, and did that for 2 weeks. That window ends this week, and we'll likely continue with it. And that comes just from even city officials, health officials yesterday, strongly recommending indoor masks. So that's the latest with regard to safety. From an academic standpoint, looking at the headlines, we have just about concluded AP exams here at the high school. Administration has been smooth thus far. Kids have been testing in the portable classrooms across the way to create just some private space while school goes on for other kids. And so, did you get to walk by the shows?
No.
Maybe we'll pick up a trip on the way to get some food.
I'll check out trailer A.
And then at the middle school, we're preparing for middle school roundtable presentations once again. We did something virtually the past 2 years. We'll be back in person this year, so that's exciting. We talked a bit at the front end of this meeting about edibles and the uptick in consumption in school and among students here and elsewhere recently. That's kids are treating this like candy, and it's exciting. And so we've had some moments in which kids have had too much, and we've had to call in an NS to make sure they're okay. And so we've been teaching into it, but we've reached out to some resources, created a presentation for kids. Our deans have presented that during lunch on various occasions. Our health teachers teaching into it as well. And then from a policy standpoint, this is different. The year 2022 is different than the year 2016, 17. And so we've got to make some updates in policy to make sure that we're doing the right things in the right way. So that's the latest.
Yeah, public policy, it has to parallel evolve, because there's a bodega up the street to sell it.
Yeah.
So it's their fault.
Yeah.
And if you don't meet them where they're at, then you're not gonna get them at all.
Yeah.
Because they're one bodega here, two down there.
Yeah.
They're selling it like they're selling candy.
Yeah. Jim on the way
Same
over,
with that.
noticed some things in the
I was
neighborhood.
smelling the air around here, I was like, ooh, I mean, and I think we as old adults, agnostic of the gray hair and the beard, we have to change with the times because the times is not going to wait for us.
Mhm.
So, I commend you for even taking that posture because there's a couple of administrators that are struggling.
Yeah. And that means kids are struggling.
You have a sense of like how many kids are eating edibles on a daily basis? And beyond the ones who are getting sick enough that you're calling in the hospital, like, do you think it's a 10% kind of problem or like a 30% kind of problem? Or
My sense is it's more of the former. And I can remember being in school and kids selling me candy. And this is like one step removed from candy. And so it's kind of like there's just transactions are easy and kind of exciting and a lot more frequent. And so it's just different. It's a different world. So it's tricky to kind of figure out what the right sort of sense is because it's still very much a safety issue. And we've got to teach into it so the kids are aware of that. And like some of these cases, kids did not think they would get sick, and suddenly they're like totally out of it. And so even working with families, I think families are kind of like taking a step back to like, what's this mean? My kid just had to go to ambulance to the hospital because of like substance abuse. That's different.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something we're all kind of wrestling with, and there really hasn't been all that much guidance out there for schools. There's one New York Times article that came out, a year ago on this, and that's probably the best resource I've seen.
Wow.
So that's sad. It's not, that's irresponsible. So I'm hoping that officials catch on and offer more to schools so that we weren't built for this. So.
This is not sure really put you aside, or generally speaking, is this something that kids get suspended for in other schools or here, or is this, is there a punishment?
So
Showing up, still in the class,
it's
but not being
yeah,
disruptive, just sitting there zoning out.
we treated it as a health concern in the past,
Uh-huh.
and then brought in families, and if need be, brought in the health folks, and that's scary. No one wants to be involved in having to go to a hospital
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of this. So
But disciplinary action.
I think we're kind of weighing some of those things right now. And there is a bit of case by case. And so distributing is a little
That's
different
easy,
than
yeah.
consuming.
Yeah.
And so there's some parallels to perhaps the sorts of drugs in the past that kind of have been in spaces, but it's something that I think all has to be reconsidered and thought through.
Even like bringing it to school, having it on campus, that's different.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
interesting.
And like the school is the place where you get to see everyone. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
It's
Can't
all
do much
it's just
about
like,
that in
it's just
school.
different. Yeah, there isn't. Yeah.
Like you
so-
said, every bodega in Manhattan sells this stuff. Yeah, you just walk
It's
in
just
there.
it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working with Boys and Girls High School. That's my new project, last week, and I'm just as a coach helping with the basketball.
Mhm.
Um,
A team
Yeah.
too,
So kids just show up. And your first reaction is to be disciplinarian, but you don't know what they're going through. You have it, and there's nobody providing guidance. And the principal, that's the first thing she wanted to do. Yeah, like okay, and then what? Then what? Two of the kids had good grades, the other two, I don't know that, but it's just it takes a form like this, and everybody's ideas to try to socialize and ideate on something that is practical. And even then, you try it might not be practical, it might not be sustainable. But the way we were raised, if you come to school with something you're not supposed to come to school with, you're going to get a consequence. Okay, but now we're sending them back in a post-pandemic world. That's the consequence, going back out in the world. So it's there is no right or wrong answer. Again, she didn't do well. She still isn't doing well.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't know he was gonna bring this up. I was gonna put you to the side about this
Oh, really?
because I don't know from a high school perspective how administrators are doing.
Yeah.
It's just a challenge.
Yeah. I can say right now, our deans and social workers are looking back at our policy, and I think that combination of team makes sense in terms of offering recommendations that are reasonable. And so, yeah, that's our approach.
And we've taken a holistic approach from speaking directly to the people at the deli, saying, these are our students, they're children, you cannot sell it to them, they are children. To,
We made that trip.
well,
We're on veterans.
Ham sandwich, okay. Just don't-
yes, all of the Mountain Dew is fine, but not this, and that they are children, and we know that this is a source.
Yep.
To talking to the students directly about like some of the consequences. And then we're thinking about our like systems of repair. What happens when you see your classmate in extremis? Because like what happens when you see your classmate taken out of the building? What happens when you have to, you know, be on a soft lockdown so someone can be cared for because they've made this decision during a school day? Like, how do we have those conversations and invite the kids in? So those are some of the things that we're thinking about. We're noticing like what we are less prepared for as administrators is this didn't used to be a problem that started as young, and it used to be a scolding problem, but not necessarily a physical danger for kids in the same way. So these are new iterative challenges in working with kids in a changing world.
So those are some headlines I wanted to just underline. And then the other two big updates around staffing and graduation forecast we'll get into later on in the meeting. I'm going to move us to miscellaneous updates and just a couple that I think are great. So we were awarded, we did apply and were awarded a grant of $86,000 from or by
86.5.
yeah, 86.5, right? By Summer Boost, which is a program that was launched through Bloomberg Philanthropic. Philanthropies. Thank you very much. Been a long day. And that is to fund middle school academic learning. And so I think a number of schools held off from applying for this grant because it's required a lot and does require staffing. And I think some of the networks are having trouble staffing such an endeavor like this. We're not all that different in that we applied and then said, let's see sort of what happens once we get the grant, we can then make a decision about whether this is feasible for us. So we got the grant. We're now looking at our staffing, making sure that we're able to kind of abide by the requirements of the grant. It is restricted. There's a pre and post test. You got to use their curriculum. It's got to be 5 weeks. It's got to be a certain number of hours and has to be in person. So those are some things. Some of those things are different than what we had originally planned to do. So we're just examining whether we can deliver on this or not, and then are in contact with the funders to make a case if we can and see if there's a compromise.
What like of the target summer school budget, what percentage does this represent?
This would
Just in a generic-
provide significantly more than what we typically spend on something like that.
This would be like more than 100% of what you spend. Okay, so then you
Yeah.
gotta take it seriously then.
So that's one, and then there are a number of events coming up that I'll put on your radar and in your calendars. We've got 8th grade graduation the morning of June 28th, 12th grade graduation the morning of June 24th, and then middle school roundtables happening June 21st to 24th. What's not listed is that we have a high school spring art exhibit happening tomorrow at 1094 Broadway in Brooklyn from 5 to 6:30. Student works inspired by art, everyday life and social issues. And so we'll be there tomorrow taking in kids' impressive creations. So
Is the high school graduation virtual or?
it'll be in person. I imagine it will be live streamed too, but it's going to be at a big Salvation Army facility in Manhattan. Yep. So that's the latest from the report this month.
I see we're about a half an hour behind. I want to be conscientious
Do
of
it.
schedule. So where do you want to take that highlight?
We can go dashboard next.
You just go down.
Yeah. And so headlines here. So report outs this month from an enrollment front, not a huge change, but we did have 4 students who moved out of our system. two moved away, and then two, I'd mentioned that there was an altercation at the high school 2 months ago, and through that altercation, two families did decide to transfer to other settings. So that, I think, just reflects the change in core from last month to this month. We're at 94% capacity in comparison to our target enrollment, and we've got a gap in the 7th grade right now that we've had trouble backfilling. And in our 12th grade, we're slightly lower than what our capacity is. And we've had that throughout the year. So no significant changes. And that's where we are, closing out the year next month. Moving on to table 2, student attrition, table 3, student attrition. We haven't reported on this in some time, but we're in good standing. We've had approximately 5% of our student body over the course of the year move out of our school. Our target, our goal here is no more than 10%. And so in good form there. We've had some students move outside of New York City. We've had some students transfer to schools because they believed it might be a better option for them. We've had some students transfer out because of commuting distances. So not all that different than in prior years. So again, in good standing there. If you get questions, feel free to just shout them out. Otherwise, I'll just run through this. We'll talk about finance. Table 5A, student attendance. Little change over the past month. I continue to be concerned with high school attendance. I don't think this is unique to us. It's just something that I think most high schools have experienced this year post-COVID. We were at 81% today. The target is 92%. And that's where we were pre-COVID. We just have more students on a given day, not necessarily the same kids, out than what we've had in the past. And so I think we've made some moves from the social work level this year in intervening with kids who are chronically absent, but I think there's more work to do in tackling this head on in the coming year more wholesomely. And so we're devising actions for the coming year so that we're meeting kids as of the first day of school and supporting them at school each and every day. If you move down to 5B, you'll see sort of like what the data looks like across different tiers of attendance. And so the last two columns provide a summary of how many kids have attendance below 80%, which is not good. They're out 2 of 10 days each week and a half. And so about a quarter of our kids have shown that to be the case at our high school this year. So those are red flags in my mind, and things I think that again are not unique to our school, but things that we have to resolve. With regard to suspensions, I think at this point in the year, we're in relatively good standing in comparison to our target of having no more than 12 unique suspension, 12 having unique suspension 12% or fewer. I think there's still work to do here. I think a majority of the instances, as you look at the table and see, are fights happening. A majority of those, a vast majority happening offsite, and typically involving negative communication via social media. So I don't think this is new in terms of report out on these sorts of challenges we're facing. But that's where things stand with suspensions at this point in the year at the high school and middle school. Student recruitment wise, Chris, you want to provide a report out here, table 7?
Sure. Miss Duffy, if you scroll down. Thank you. Cool. So I added a few new columns to this table. So column 1, grade level, column 2, target enrollment, column 3, anticipated number of returning students. So how many students from the prior grade level going into the following grade level. Column 4, anticipated number of open seats. Column 5, through May 11th, how many applications we received. Column 6, how many applications we received this time 1 year ago. So right around May 11th, 2021. Column 7, new students enrollment confirmed. These are students we had an enrollment phone call with, and they've sent in their documents. So they're confirmed for Unity Prep, either middle school or high school. These are like new students from the outside world. And then column 8, I wanted to see where were we this time 1 year ago. So compared to May 11th, 2021. So in 6th grade, we had 90 enrollments. This time last year, we had 94. So just shy of where we were last year. That number actually is updated this week. We're up to 99, I believe, this week. So the numbers continue to grow. 7th grade, 5 of 3. And the of is what like how many spots we need. So right now we have for sixth grade, we have 90 enrollments of 96 is our goal. I would love to continue to go past that as well. For eighth grade, we're 2 enrollments of 16. That's where the grade level is down right now. And it's been really tricky to recruit for eighth grade. Students just aren't moving schools from 7th to 8th grade. That's their final year in middle school.
And Chris, just to
Ninth
add
grade.
to that, Chris, just to add to that, I think our plan B here that we're beginning to act on is in the event that we feel as if we have fewer than 75 students going in our eighth grade, which is a real possibility, we'll reduce the number of sections that we have in that grade to 3 from 4, which would have some impact on the way in which we staff that, where we would cut back somewhat to then appropriately accommodate that grade with fewer students.
Thanks, Josh. Grade 9, the student enrollment has been a little tricky as of late because the DOE has not released their high school results yet. So a lot of parents right now are kind of like sitting ducks, deciding if they want to go to Unity, the other school. So I'm having a lot of conversations with families, but they're not ready to commit to a school until they know all their offers. So a lot of these conversations, I'm just chatting with them and I'll say, let's reconnect in June after you get your DU offer, deciding what they want to do. Grade 10, I don't anticipate we have any openings. Grade 11, we only have 1 opening, but I have 3 students enrolled and then grade 12, we don't typically recruit for. So overall, middle school, we have 97 of 115 spots filled. High school, we have 12 of 38 spots filled. And this is just, again, these are new spots from the outside world, anticipating a 95% of students from the prior grade level join us. And then overall, we're looking to recruit 153 new students from the outside world for the upcoming school year. We're at 109 right now.
And remind me, our past experience is that enrolled versus who end up actually coming needs to be like 1.5 to 1. Is that the right rough ratio?
No, I would say enrolled to coming, we will typically maybe drop about 10 to 15%. So like enrolled right now, they're pretty committed. The parents went out of their way to send us their child's birth certificate, a proof of residency. They took part in a pretty long phone call. So the dropout between now and like first day of school, maybe 10 to 15%.
And Chris, so what we're aiming for now, based on the meeting with Camus on Thursday with you, is that 90 of 96, we'd like to be at about 130 of 96, to then be in a place where we feel good about our enrollment in the 6th grade as of September being 96 students.
I would say the one minor correction, I would say 130 total for the middle school. So maybe like 110 for 6th grade. If we had 130 6th graders legitimately enrolled, I'd be a little concerned about being over enrolled. So I think our goal right now, our like reach goal is 130 brand new middle schoolers joining us next year. So that's like middle school total, new students enrollment confirmed. So right now we're at 97. I would love to get to 130 there, but 115, I would feel very safe at.
You know, PSA 81, right? I'm like communicating with the principal now and Mr. Daniels from the Brighter Trustees. Like, you made a phone call. I'll talk to you anytime.
Yeah,
Just,
I mean, I think at this point we're in good standing, and it can't hurt, and for future use it would be helpful.
I got you.
The thought, I just think about this. We've got, I mean, it is very likely that a majority or vast majority of public schools right now, and maybe some charters, although charters are in the sort of boat, haven't done anything with regard to recruitment other than maybe a couple of fairs here and there. And I just think about this team and the amount of like time they spend on calls and social media, and like it's impressive and it's lopsided with regard to effort. And we're in a time where like I've always said it's competitive, but it's increasingly more competitive each and every year. So I feel really good about this. It is a hustle and takes a lot of work, and I'm kind of scared for what might unfold for a lot of our sister schools that aren't able to put in the same amount of time, effort.
From my slight viewpoint, which is basically classical,
Yeah.
I think you're right that they don't like the marketing part of it, they don't know that well.
Yeah.
And like, so last year and the year before, I think came as like a real shock to them. But I mean, I guess this goes to my overall thing about the academics, but now they're back.
Yeah.
They're back at being, way more people applying if they have seats.
Yeah.
And so I do think like once you sort of once we get to that place with academic performance, we'll get to stop worrying about all this stuff.
Yeah, and yep, absolutely. And particularly in Bed-Stuy in the year 2022-23.
And Bed-Stuy is gonna always be competitive. It's Bed-Stuy. I mean, academics are not. It's always gonna be competitive, and then when you add athletics to it, it changes the dynamic. I mean, and so relationships matter. I think academic performance is important, but I think because of where we sit within the city or the borough of Brooklyn, it's a bit more challenging, especially if that's the hotbed that you're looking to get your nucleus of kids from. And at Bed-Stuy, there's a lot of folks pulling that way, especially high school. High school is going to be challenging.
We found at the high school to have it perhaps not be as competitive because there's that natural breaking point. Kids can commute to different places, or we have roughly half of our students coming from our middle school with fill seats. And so we haven't had to put forth as much effort there. But I think it's worth keeping an eye on, particularly as changes happen and when families learn about which schools are options for them. So thanks for that, Chris.
Welcome.
Other quick notes here. We'll talk about staff recruitment. Table 9 has been updated. I haven't updated that at all in prior settings just because this is about the right time information-wise to provide some updates with staff recruitment. But again, I'll give you something better and more detailed momentarily. I'll skip down to table 12. No, not table 12. Table 12 really quickly. We did have conferences at the high school earlier last month, and just under 70% of families took part in that at 68%. Our goal was 70, so we're just shy of that, but these numbers are better than in prior years now that we're kind of remote and offer that option to families. So that's where we are with conferences. And then with COVID, table 15, no updates here, no movement from the past month. Beginning to think about next year and how we devise some sort of encouragement to have more of our families vaccinated in the event that like this continues to linger, and it very likely will in the fall and be disruptive. So I think like most of the political entities in this country, it's hard to kind of push the envelope beyond where we are now, but we're open to ideas on how to do so. About a third of our kids are vaccinated right now.
On family participation, that's like a typical parent-teacher night kind of thing.
Yeah.
You ever look at the 30% that aren't coming and sort of see what that correlates with in terms of everything else, basically?
We have, and there may be a correlation between the lack of presence in other aspects of school too, and then there's a small sample where it's just like date night's going on. It was a conflict, and so whatever it is. But I think
Well, so in those cases, presumably they're not missing everyone,
Yeah.
they're just missing one here and there. But it might, I mean, I only from the success model, I know this is something they focus on a lot, but it'd be interesting just to see from ours whether the data backs it up as to being important or not.
I think one key difference between something we do and something Success does and something that's not complete here is this is 68% of all families, which is pretty high for a high school. But what is not reported is there is actually a winter conference portion here that is directed towards our tier 2 and 3 students, or students who are struggling the most. And those are larger groups, and those are consistently followed up. It's not like, hey, can you sign up? Please sign up. This is like, hi, what time can you do? We'll make anything work. Multiple people join. There are multiple ways to reach out. And the vast majority of those families do make time. So there is another.
Is that because of what Jake was getting at, that they weren't volunteering to come at the bottom, bottom performers' parents didn't say, yeah, I'll be there, so you got to reach out to them? Or
I
is-
think
or-
so we had conferences for all families in April. In March, our academic counseling team had separate conferences for a subset of families of students who were struggling academically. And there typically is a correlation between some of that struggle and then maybe ability to respond at home, whatever it is. And so this is technically an underreporting. We should include that too, because there's been communication about student progress with those families as well. So it's likely significantly higher than the 68%.
And I'm fairly certain that if we looked at those together, we would see that it's not necessarily our most vulnerable students who are not getting contact. There are a small number of them who do not, whose families were not successful in reaching. That's a smaller number. So in that manner, we haven't done that exact correlation work with, say, the spring conferences. But my guess is no, those families get a little bit more contact than a family who is not in that category. And so that's a difference we would see.
Can I make maybe a recommendation at the end of the year on this data, like for basically our last meeting, is just how many families attended no conferences throughout the 3 different opportunities.
Be interesting.
I think with roundtables, historically, we've had 98, 99% of families take part in middle school. And it's been messaged and is now understood to be a requirement, and it's a great thing. So it's like, show up because it's awesome. And so that same requirement doesn't exist in the same way with conferences. So
What would you do with that information? It's correlated to.
I guess if it's not correlated, then it's sort of like, okay, we don't really need to, focus on it because it's not correlated and it's just, some parents are too busy and that's life. But if it is correlated, then you might say, okay, what's the next level of work we can do to get engaged, because, maybe that engagement's important.
I think it's fair, but I think to the point. It's important to predicate facts and assumptions and not blur the two, I think. And not have perceptions. I think, information that is critical, but I think it needs to be weighed objectively. That's all. That's all I would say.
So I think those are the updates dashboard wise. Jim, I don't think I was successful in making up any time there. So
No, you were horrible. Horrible. You have anything really urgent on strategic planning?
Well, I thought there are 2 PFAS I thought would be helpful coming out of the SLC call. One was on staffing and one was on graduation forecast. I thought maybe because staffing is a really important part of like our model. This is people work. Maybe it fits well with this portion of the meeting. So I thought I'd offer a quick summary of where we are staffing wise as of May. Makes sense. And I'm going directly to the school report too. So I'll kind of convey what's here in writing, and then we can have discussions you guys see fit, and perhaps there's some insights that'd be helpful to this. So from a staffing point, our goal, and it has been, is to retain 80% of our staff each and every year. And hiring wise, for all hiring to be completed for known vacancies we have by June 1st. So forecast wise, I'm on page 3 of the school leader report. Retention wise, right now we're on pace as I look at the data, which I see by day, to retain 70 to 80% of our staff, which I think is fairly strong. We've got approximately a small number of staff who we won't be engaging in renewal agreements with. And those have either happened or in process. From a hiring standpoint, I don't think we're going to get to hiring all of our known vacancies by 6/1 at this point in time. We have made 4 hires. We have also made some significant internal shifts. I mentioned this to Jake and Jeanette and Madonna on Thursday. Melissa's going to be in the coming year our CAO and acting co-principal of teaching and learning. She did this 2 years ago. We, as I reported last month, do have a vacancy at that position at the high school as our current co-CPTO is to be moving back to Chicago to be with family. So I think the best move is for Melissa to continue to do that good work. She knows it well. She's an expert of our school at this point in time, and I'm feeling really good for team and students with that shift. So thank you, Melissa. In addition to that, one of our academic counselors will be moving into a director of academic counseling position at the school. She's been with us 5 years. She's terrific. She's strong. She's doing a majority of the work in support of our students who are at the cusp of graduation. And so lots of like very direct intervention work in helping kids. earn that diploma in 4 years. So feel great about that, and she's fired up. So some really key positions being held by some really key people at school next year.
Based on your vacancies, do you have critical vacancies that are more important than others that need to be addressed?
Amazing segue. So we've got a couple positions that I think are prioritized for us. We've got a high school ELA teaching position open right now. We are interviewing people for that, somewhat active. We've got 2 science teacher positions open right now. We've made an offer to one person who turned it down for some other options, so it's competitive. High school science is going to be competitive. There are a couple of specialty positions right now that we have openings for that it's been somewhat challenging to connect with experienced people on. That's high school Spanish. And then we got a high school health and PE position also available. So a few admin positions that I feel good about. We may do some internal shifts and consolidations so that they don't need to exist in the same way next year from an organizational standpoint. So we're kind of looking at all possibilities in the end, such that we're kind of using our team to their greatest capacities and being efficient in doing so. So those are some of the vacancies we have moving into the tail end of May. I'll say that our director of special projects, you guys know Michelle Roy has been doing really great work in helping us recruit from a few different sources, LinkedIn being really good to us this year. And so she's become an expert in that area. So Chris has also been doing a whole lot of calls at the intro screening level of candidates. And so we've got more people coming in. There's more volume now than we've had in prior years because of their good work, which is a good thing. So I do feel good at this point in time, given where we are. So I've offered some strengths and challenges here. I don't think I need to name them fully. Anything worth kind of getting some clarity on.
I don't think you need to go through this. I think
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
this is a place where Josh and team are doing quite well, especially compared to the market of charter schools.
Yeah, so I think selfishly for us, we'd like to be in a place where we've got things higher up, moving into the month of July where we've got some downtime. If you've got vacancies you're sitting on during the time, it's kind of stressful. So that's the goal right now.
The flip is it's nice to have a little bit of flexibility as the enrollment numbers sort of sort out.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, and typically there's a case or two of like something coming up with the staff member. What it was like. Yeah.
And it's like if labor market remains tight, you're probably gonna have some attrition those first few months.
Yeah. So that's I think that's kind of where we are strategically thinking about team.
All right, let's go to AFC.
So let's see here. Is Alex on tonight or is she a video?
He's
She
on.
is. Hey, Alex.
Hey, all.
How are you?
I am very well. It's nice to see everybody in a group.
All right, yeah. So it's your time to shine. You want to provide a report out of the month of March?
I will. It's very brief. Does somebody want to grant me screen share? Or I can just, if you guys have it in front of you, I can just do my very brief.
Alex, I made you a co-host, so I want Trudy to have access to it as well. I'll see if you want to
Got it.
share sharing your screen. That'd be great. And then I'm not sure if the
Okay, as Josh
projector in the
mentioned-
room is on, but feel free to turn the projector on in the classroom because it should be hooked up to the computer as well. If you guys want to.
That's it.
We're good.
So these are the financials through March. As we've seen in the past several months, all of our near-term and sustainability indicators continue to be healthy and strong. Days cash on hand at 205, goal of 90. A lot of this is due to the influx of cash from the PPP last year, which we are very grateful for. No major changes to report in enrollment. We are still seeing an enrollment variance of about $250,000. But because we have all of this additional grant support, we're not seeing that affect net income in a negative way. And then we look at the profit and loss through March, you'll see that our net income to date is just about $1.89 million compared to a little over $1 million. Now, what we did is we started adjusting out all of the grant support and any extraneous expenses that we believe we can definitely relate to COVID, which gives us an adjusted net income of 781,000, which you'll see is a variance of about $250,000. A large portion of that is going to be attributed to the variance in enrollment. As far as any specific accounts, everything is trending as it has from the beginning. So compensation is over budget as we knew it was in the beginning. We have grant funds that are supporting those additional positions to help support students. And then when we look at cash out through the end of the fiscal year, cash levels continue to be quite healthy, no issues, no concerns. And that is the very brief March report. If anyone has any questions.
With no questions, we can move into drafting the budget where we are at this point in time. And so corrected call on Friday. Just process wise, we'll seek approval for the budget during our next meeting in June. So this was kind of a preliminary examination of where things stand at this point in time. So high level, I'm feeling good about the status of the annual budget for the coming year, 22-23. Some of the assumptions we're making now, enrollment, I'm thinking more about like the big items that really sway our budget from year to year. Some of the individual line items will be refining over the course of next month as we prepare for approval. But enrollment wise, we're assuming an enrollment of 519, which is approximately where we've been on average this year. In the event that we experience a downward trend beyond that, we would look to reduce our costs accordingly. And some of that would be funding that would go toward staffing. So if we need to, we will do that. From a revenue perspective, we're not assuming, we're now just confirming that per pupil has gone up by 4.7% for the coming year. From an inflation standpoint, we're assuming right now 3%. In the event that inflation is above 3%, which it is, we reduce costs. And so we won't purchase as many things as we need. If that's the case, then that feels fine based on prior experiences. So I think that's where we are from an annual standpoint. From a 5-year standpoint, I've got some work to do in continuing to create a healthy budget. And some of the challenges right now with that are that we're assuming per pupil increases after this year of 3% versus the 4.7% this year. So that's the revenue end of things, and that's just a flat out assumption based on historicals. We're also assuming at the expense end of things, 2.5% increase in salaries. And so that's south of the 3%. From an insurance standpoint, in having discussions with those who are more in the know than we are, we're making assumptions of anywhere between 6 and 12% on insurance. So insurance prices increasing beyond our revenues, which is challenging. And then we're continuing to assume inflation of 3% beyond next year, over the next 5 years. So I think that coupled with from a lease and sublease perspective, some changes with regard to reimbursement requires a little more work in smoothing out the budget so that it's fiscally healthy beyond next year. So from an annual perspective, we're in fine form. From a perspective of creating a budget for our authorizer as we seek renewal, I've got a bit of work to do. And that's assuming a simplified model in which we don't do any of the things that we're sort of pondering with a possible expansion, a possible downward expansion of serving more students in lower grades. And so as we think about preparing a budget and then making a proposal to our authorizer in August, we've got some decisions to make about what we decide to give them.
No,
So-
I don't know about that. I gotta
Yeah.
be careful there. I would just straight line everything out, show that you've been responsible, proven you're responsible. I don't think you may need to make assumptions about things that we may or may not do that are big ticket items in year 3. They don't want
Yeah.
to see that either, you know. We change the budget every single year. We had a 5-year budget. We've adjusted it every year based on the knowledge we gained from the prior year. So I wouldn't go, it's gotta make sense.
Yeah.
And it sounds like 3% inflation you know, across the board is something that no one's gonna come after you on. And if it's, a different number, we know how to adjust, we've shown that, but I would stay away from, for the authorizer, showing lumpy things that's just gonna lead to a conversation we're not ready to have yet.
I think with regard to a possible expansion of this building to then perhaps serve more families and students, I think that's right. Where I tend to waver is if we are also applying for approval to expand downward
Totally
K-5,
different,
we would have
totally
to
different
then.
budget. You're talking about
Yeah,
a
yeah.
totally different. Yeah, this is not that. I wouldn't start that.
So the question is whether Palo would want and SED would want for us to be able to model that out with that proposal in the renewal application,
Okay, well,
such that it's reflected.
I would do that as a separate budget. I would do what you know, start with what you know, the middle and the high. Just do that. And then find out from Paulo if he wants some sort of appendix,
Yeah.
hypothetical, you know, startup kind of thing. That's a separate. So
I tend to agree with Jim, but I guess for the purposes of the board, it might be nice if you want to take a shot at it anyway, the board might see it, but I think at the end of the day, we'll all agree with Jim. That's the purpose of the authorizer.
yeah, I mean, we know what it's gonna look like. It's gonna look like when we start the school, right? It's
Yeah.
gonna look like.
It's basically what that increment of investment is required.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's gonna be, you know, we're marginally, marginal surplus at the other two schools. How much of that go to the other? It's not gonna be a lot, you know, and having that conversation. That gets into what are we gonna ask for in the renewal? And yeah,
Yeah, I'm wrapping my head around
We need to figure out quickly.
part two of that with,
What is the timing between the renewal versus the expansion proposal? Like, is it, these are
we have to
happening,
submit our renewal application, part one of it in August. Part two of it, which is essentially just an update of our scores for middle school. And maybe some updates to high school graduation, depending on kind of where things end up, June versus August graduation. Do that in October.
versus when would you apply for the downward expansion?
That would have to be included in the application in August.
yeah,
If we wanted it to be for what year?
So in order to then be able to utilize
Of
the
5
grant
Got it, okay.
that we were
Okay, so
given in
it's-
October, we'd have to submit in August unless I get different guidance.
but what is it that's required? I mean, is it just the one page? We want to move down and here's the budget, or is there a whole new? Is it, how much effort are we talking?
Something
about?
in between what you just
Okay.
described. Something in
Well, I
between
assume
one
it's
page
that
and
whole
maybe.
write-up you had to do originally, right?
Yeah,
Your
there is an
vision and
appendix.
your mission and
A
I
lot of
hope
that
you-
will
I hope you don't have
hold.
to change that.
It's but they have not, we're waiting for the release of the newest edition of the renewal application, and that may go out next week. Michelle's gonna check in with our authorizer about when, because she's preparing now to begin writing things up and wants to hold off in case there's a very different application we have to use for August. But that's the immediate next step. That was even as of this morning, I'm speaking with her.
And so let's say we apply for that expansion and they say yes, then we sort of, you know, we then go about trying to put it together, but if we can't put together the funds and stuff like that, it's,
I think the experiences that they've had is that, yeah, schools can still bow out at some point in time.
Yeah,
or
might as well
take a-
try it then.
Yeah,
And how does, I don't even want to ask this question, but how does space work?
same. It's an interesting, I've been thinking about this a little bit. I mean, you know, what did we do originally? Maybe this is a conversation we can take part
Yeah, we
in,
can.
over food too. But it's the same idea. You put forth, hey, here are 3 possible sites. And so in the past, we worked with a broker and listed those sites. At the same time, back then, there was like, we had the DOE sort of saying that they may have space for us. And so that was good enough. But the climate right now is interesting because there are lots of under-enrolled schools. And I don't know what that means for available space. And so that's one end of it. And then I think the climate is also one in which there's relatively more animosity toward charters than maybe even back in 2013, 14.
There's a lot.
So Lots of factors here.
Well, let's pick that up
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's move on. Where were we? Who's next?
So I think just, so we talked about budget. That's
Yeah.
kind of where we are, where we need to go over the coming few weeks. So.
DSC. Sorry. I'm not seeing
I don't
anything.
think we need anything on the DSC, do we?
No, I think the thought, we spent good time talking about the 5-year budget as related to the summer lease and lease during that meeting. And I think so there's a next step of, I think our inquiry went to Jeanette and Marion about like how much to treat the difference between the lease and sublease and whether amendments can happen within either of those. So that's where we are.
Okay, ECPC.
We spent some time talking about strategy regarding renewal and connecting with the right people as advocates. And so nothing to report out for full team, but that was the element of the meeting on Tuesday.
SLC, anything we haven't talked about already in that one?
Grading forecasts. So I'll do so now. I'm gonna go back to the school year report. And
That's
so,
not in here, is it?
yeah, page 2.
Graduation.
Oh, okay. That's not.
After that, graduation forecast as of May, the last report out I provided was back in February. So the table that you see in front of you on page 2 offers just a summary of kind of where we are now as of May versus February versus where we were with other cohorts at the mid-year mark or even at the start of their senior years. And so in general, the takeaway here is there's been no huge movement in where kids are in their prospect toward graduation as of June across the cohort. So about 81% of our kids are in really strong standing, are ready to go, set to graduate. About 14% of our kids need some level of intervention, some help in doing so. And then we've got 2 students now. I had 3 earlier, but we did confirm that a student now has submitted the paperwork so that they're not on our roster and are effectively counted as being homeschooled by the DOE, which is something they've been doing for 2 years now. So that's where things stand from a summary standpoint. Let's see. So forecast wise, we're looking at close to 93% of all of our students graduating. We have 7 students in the senior class who have IEPs. We anticipate all of them graduating. And so I think those are strengths at this point in time. And I think for the students who require additional support because they're custody, maybe they're failing the course right now, they need toward graduation, but are close. Perhaps it's 2 courses, but are close. We've got plans B and C intact for them to ensure that they've got all the support they need toward graduating in June. Challenges, so there are about 10 students that do need that support. And so we've got 1 student we've confirmed will not graduate in 4 years. They may return to our school for a 5th year or are now thinking about a transfer school option where they might be able to recoup credits at a faster rate than what we would offer within our school. We just haven't been built for that the same way that other schools have. We've got 1 student who's on roster but is being homeschooled, but it hasn't been processed within the DOE. So they're on our roster and we don't quite know how they're doing with their homeschooling. And then we've got 8 students in-house that we're supporting on the daily. That's constant check-ins with family. It's constant check-ins with student. It's meetings with the grade level team in 12th grade, meetings among senior leaders that happen on a weekly basis. And that's kind of the work. In the event that these 8 students don't make to graduation in June, some of them, all of them, would take part in our summer academy too, and perhaps have the ability to graduate in August. So a few at-bats for them. So that's where we are now. We feel good about like this plan. The communication's been strong. The support's been strong. This has been a weird year. And these students have been through a lot in not experiencing in-person schooling for close to 2 years. So as a small school that's heavily staffed on the support front, we're well equipped. So we'll do these kids well. And that's where graduation stands at this point.
Okay, great. Associate board. I don't think they have any.
No updates from the associate board, other than a couple of them have been coming in for Algebra 1 tutoring on the weekends. Helping out, shipping in.
Okay, so moving on, let's do the items for approval, the easy one. Got the minutes from the prior meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments on those? No, seeing none, all in favor, approving the minutes, thank you. Okay, next one, do we need to, has anything changed on this? Do we have a recommendation?
Chris can do.
Okay, Chris, you
A
want to
lot
go
of
ahead on
work
the?
went into it.
Yeah.
I think Chris, you.
Hello, oh, we're talking employee benefits, we're up to?
Yes.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks for sharing your screen, Melissa. So essentially, and Jeanette can fill me in if I'm missing anything. We were working closely with Matt Libby now for 7-8 years. He came back with what I consider a great proposal for our employee benefits for the upcoming school year. We are proposing switching to Cigna for a rate decrease. We're actually, from what Matt has told us, we're one of the few schools that our medical insurance premiums are actually going down. One thing we are switching up for next year as well is we are offering an out-of-network plan for employees. But if an employee chooses that plan, they're responsible for paying for the additional costs. So the per person premium cost to Unity is exactly the same, whether an employee chooses the out-of-network plan, the plan that has out-of-network benefits, or the general plan. Melissa, if you could go down a few more slides. Slide 9. So yeah, this is what Oxford wanted to keep our business, but at a 1.5% increase rate. And then next slide. So that's why we are proposing to switch to Cigna instead for a 5% decrease. And then employees have the option to buy up to the OAP plan that has out-of-network benefits, but at the cost to the employee. If you could go keep going. We are proposing to stay with Guardian Dental this year in hopes that what Cigna has told us is that they'll give us a bit of a discount on our medical insurance if we switch to their Cigna dental plan next year as well. If you keep going. Sticking with Guardian Vision for a rate decrease, and we're sticking with Guardian for short-term, long-term, and life disability. We had a separate call with Marion last Thursday. The one concern she had was that if we offer out-of-network benefits to employees, and a lot of employees take those out-of-network benefits, will it raise up premiums next year? But Matt is under the impression that it'll have a minimal impact. So Marianne was comfortable offering out-of-network benefits to employees now.
But if it did go up next year, that marginal increase would pass to the employee, right? Choosing out the network.
I think her concern.
Right, but she's worried about the premiums increase going up for everybody next year. So let's say somebody chooses, I want the out-of-network plan this year. I'm going to go to a whole bunch more doctors that are now out-of-network. So there's just more claims going to the providers. And that's why Marion was worried about premiums next year going up for everybody. But we anticipate that with the out-of-network plan for employees, it's quite a bit higher. It's like triple the price for an individual. It's like $200 more per paycheck for a family plan that I don't anticipate many employees choosing that upper level plan. And Matt believes it'll have a minimal cost on premiums for everybody next year.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
From a recruitment perspective,
And also what is great, this Cigna plan is actually better.
it's more of an employee recruitment.
I mean, candidly, in Manhattan, there was no such thing as a network. You want a good surgeon, you're out of network. Good dentist, you're out of network. I don't know what
A lot of the employees have been asking about out-of-network plans are typically for mental health specialists that are not in network. So that's been like the employees that have been vocal about wanting out-of-network benefits. It's typically been for mental health specialists. I'm excited that we're able to hopefully to offer out-of-network benefits for employees. Obviously, would love to do even more, but I think this is the first step in the right direction.
Okay, great. Any questions?
I'm completely fine and supportive of all this. I'll say just, if you want personal experience, we switched to Cigna a year ago. And also caveat, we have a much older workforce.
Mhm.
So take this all with a grain of salt, but we switched to them, I think, to have like flat increase or something like that versus our existing person. So it's a giant jump. Now, 1 year later, they're jumping us like 20%. So yeah,
That you
don't,
experience.
yeah, so don't
But
be
on
entirely-
average, you're fine.
What's that?
On average, you're fine, right? You know, they took you down, that would bring you back.
Well, I think it's just like, you're always switching because
Oh, yeah.
basically they
Yeah.
run for your rate
Yeah,
and then you switch. So it's sort of, to me, I always weigh it against how upsetting it is for the employee base to have to switch each time versus
I think the
managing
employees are
costs.
benefiting too in a number of ways for like the
It
deductible.
it is a better plan,
Okay.
a bit. Yeah, the co-pays are going down. They don't have to use that Sterling card as much. So it actually is a better plan. And the hopes is that if we switch dental next year as well, we can negotiate a bit to get a large increase down to a small increase or a medium-sized increase next year.
okay, anything else? Any questions? Okay,
No, I just would thank Chris and Mario.
Oh,
and the
that's
team
a-
for their good work.
this is the one I run away from. I want nothing to do with the insurance. And they do a great job on it, so thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
Matt did a
Thanks,
job.
guys.
Yeah. Okay, great. So all in favor of the proposed employee benefits plan? That's great. Thank you. Okay. Okay, public comment. I don't think we have.
Sorry, Josh, just for procedure, there is one other small item to vote. This is a
Oh, yeah,
quote
sorry.
from, it's a quote from 20,000, just over the board threshold, $20,000, 592 from iWise, our tech vendor for Chromebooks, student Chromebooks and staff laptops. We actually anticipate that we'll be getting reimbursed for, I think about 75% of this, but the reimbursement won't come until the summer. It's through the Emergency Connectivity Fund. But because the initial out-of-pocket payment that we have to pay now is over 20 grand, I think it does require board approval.
Okay. Did everybody have a chance to look at this? It came out. late.
I move to approve.
Yeah,
Seconded.
okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
And Chris, we'll make sure this is in the minutes.
Yep.
Okay, Josh, anything else you want to say? We're running very late.
No, June meetings are also big,
Yeah.
so I think expect a full list of things to approve in the June meeting, including budget, including kind of board related positions and re-elections and that sort of thing. Calendar for the coming year, perhaps staff handbook, that can also wait. In terms of dates, roundtables shifted out by a week. And so what we've done in the past when we were in person is we had the board meeting coincide with roundtables at the middle school so that folks could make it if they choose. We could do the same thing this year. In fact, I think roundtable starts on Tuesday to give you more time. So if you guys could kind of reach out to you this week and propose a couple of times for the meeting in June, which would be the week of the 21st.
I'm usually
I know that folks
traveling
may
that
be out.
time,
Yeah.
but I've hopped on at 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
In Sweden and we're, but yeah, that's fine.
Great.
Okay,
That's
cool.
it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Trudy. Have a good night.
Right.
Take care, Chris.
All right, we will.
Thank you. Melissa, if you could put Okini's laptop back in the main office and the mic out and the charger, that would be incredible.
No problem.
Thank